Sarah Palin wants to battle the New York Times, but first she has to beat another assailant, the COVID. Because the trial for Sarah Palin's defamation lawsuit against the New York Times may be delayed after the former vice presidential candidate tested positive for COVID-19. That is according to the judge overseeing her case. So she is doing this trial in federal court in Manhattan. Jed Rakoff is the US district judge in charge of it, says that she had a positive test result. So now he may choose to start proceedings on February 3rd instead of today. And the way he announced it is just great. He says, she is, of course, unvaccinated. Because, of course, she's unvaccinated. And hey, that makes her a true believer. I almost have more respect for that. Anyway, what is this trial about? Well, it goes way back to 2017. So she says that a 2017 New York Times editorial falsely linked her to a mass shooting in Tucson, Arizona. The editorial was published after a shooting in Alexandria, Virginia, in which Steve Scalise, a member of House Republican leadership, was wounded. And the Times said that the Tucson shooting, in which 6 people were killed and a Democratic Congresswoman, Gabby Giffords, was severely injured, came after Palin's Political Action Committee circulated a map putting 20 Democrats, including Giffords, under stylized crosshairs, and that the link to political incitement was clear. So this goes way back, Francesca.
Yep.
Do you actually remember the mini scandal about that Palin ad?
It was a huge scandal. Yeah, it wasn't a mini scandal, it was a huge scandal. And it was one of the first moments where we saw that the base that the right was cultivating was so off their, stuff that they actually might have looked at that map, saw crosshairs and were like, yeah, I got a gun, let's go. And we saw that. So it was kind of one of those moments that I think a lot of people who study, whether it's media or politics or anything, or just alive and care, can point to, okay, there is a direct consequence when you put out incendiary material like that. When you put a crosshair over someone and then you say, oh, I was just joking. Oh, that was just a political crosshair. So it's weird to me that Sarah Palin would almost dredge that up in 2017. Because it almost brings more shine and attention to what she did.
That's true. Look, I don't. I feel like maybe we'll disagree on this. I think that in theory, in a different political time, coming from a different political person representing a different political party, doing the crosshairs wouldn't necessarily be the worst thing. You're targeting the people, preferably not to be shot. But the issue is that this is America, where we take politics so seriously that many people are increasingly willing to literally murder or at least cheer the murdering of their political opponents. This is coming from a party that even before the more explicit turn to constantly invoking violence in connection with politics has made guns into their own religion. Like when you do that and you put out this message with the crosshairs to people that love guns more than literally life itself, then that becomes more of a problem. Anyway, we might disagree, but that maybe everybody thinks it's objectively a problem. Now, so what is she doing? What's behind this? She objected to language that James Bennett, the Times former editorial page editor, added to a draft that had been prepared by a colleague. She contends that the added material fitted Bennett's preconceived narrative, and that as an experienced editor, he knew and understood the meaning of his words. She's seeking unspecified damages, but according to court papers, has estimated $421,000 in damage to her reputation.
Oh, come on.
Isn't it amazing? The estimate like rounds to the thousand. That's specific.
Yeah, it's not 430, but 421 would definitely that's my mortgage, that's my food costs. No, this is what I'm saying though. It is clearly a ploy just to get some money. This has been a thing. People have written op-eds about that exact Political Action Committee's release of that map. So to finally go after somebody now for that, she just needs the money. That's why she's doing all these appearances on cable where she literally has no idea what's going on. She's completely out to lunch. But also the other thing about it, let's say it's not about the money. It also shows the fragility when you sue for defamation, not always, especially people in power suing for defamation. It often reveals that they actually did something. I'm thinking of Alan Dershowitz suing one of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, who accused him of actually assault and of sleeping with him. So, he's like, I did not, I'm going to sue you. It's like, buddy. Yeah. This bring way more attention on you than you really want. And I feel like the same goes for this.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I would also say, look, I'm obviously not a lawyer. There are other people you can turn to on YouTube for that, I guess. But anyway, when you ask for $421,000 in damage to your reputation, like we talk about things like property damage. Something happens to property, you estimate how much damage. Isn't there some element of how valuable the thing was before that should be taken into account? Because this is her reputation we're talking about. Was there that much room to really damage it by 2017? I mean, the best thing that's happened to her since then is that she was on The Masked Singer. She chose that. Did that not do damage to her reputation? Anyway, we'll leave it up to the justices. Supposedly, there is not much expectation that the judge will side with her. But there is this growing appetite on the right to make it easier to claim defamation, which they think is going to be great for them. And maybe for some it will if they make that change. But they also very, very frequently lob evidence-free claims against individuals and corporations at the heart of whatever conspiracy theory they came up with on the internet that week. Isn't that gonna also open them up to more lawsuits? Yeah. They should be careful.
Hello, Alex Jones.
Exactly. For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.